A trip that carries a lot of geopolitical weight and one where the optics need to be just right. Workers have been sprucing up Pyongyang ahead of Chinese President Xi Jinping's two-day state visit to the North Korean capital. Keeping the pressure on, the US targets a Russian firm for allegedly helping North Korea evade sanctions aimed at preventing the regime developing its nuclear weapons program. Plus, the Federal Reserve stands pat on its key interest rate, but says it's open to start cutting rates if needed to protect the US economy from trade conflicts. Our top story this morning. Chinese President Xi Jinping heads to Pyongyang in the coming hours to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Although the face-to-face will mark their fifth since Kim came to power in late 2011, this will be Xi's first trip to North Korea. We thought it timely to get some expert analysis on the two-day state trip to see what the two leaders want and how it could affect further relations between the North and the United States. Yoon Jung-min reports.
Chinese President Xi Jinping is visiting the North Korean capital. Although it marks their fifth face-to-face, it is the first time that Xi is heading to Pyongyang since he took power in 2013. When asked why it has to be now and what Xi wants from this visit, experts say China wants to demonstrate its influence over the Korean peninsula, particularly ahead of negotiation with Washington at the G20 summit amid their trade spat and political tensions.
At this juncture, ahead of the US-China negotiations at the G20 summit, Xi's visit can increase Beijing's bargaining power against Washington by showing that it has strong influence over North Korea as its traditional ally.
The expert says North Korea also has important things to gain from Xi's visit.
Pyongyang can show off its friendly ties with Beijing during the visit, and it may serve as a new trump card amid the stalled denuclearization talks with Washington.
When it comes to the third North Korea-US summit, experts say they have to wait and see because they aren't sure for now whether this summit will positively or negatively affect their relationship. Officially, China supports talks and negotiation between Pyongyang and Washington, but some say worst-case scenario is still possible if North Korea further consolidates its stance against the U.S. backed by China. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Now, the U.S. Treasury Department has announced new sanctions targeting a Russian financial firm for helping North Korea to channel funds into its nuclear weapons program. The move is seen as a warning to Beijing as it came right on the eve of Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to North Korea. Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
Washington has imposed fresh sanctions on a Russian financial company for allegedly helping Pyongyang evade sanctions. The U.S. Treasury Department said Wednesday that its sanctions target Russian Financial Society, which has provided financial services to Dandong Zhongsheng Industry and Trade, a North Korea-controlled entity based in China. It also accused the Russian company of opening multiple bank accounts for a representative of Korea Zinc Industrial Group, which had already been designated under Washington's sanction program. The statement explained that Russian Financial Society has helped the North channel funds to the regime's nuclear weapons program. The new sanctions freeze all of the Russian financial firm's U.S.-based property. The latest move comes just 3 months after Washington announced North Korea-related sanctions targeting 2 Chinese shipping firms. But U.S. President Donald Trump sparked confusion by tweeting a day later that additional sanctions were not necessary. The announcement of the new sanctions, which comes on the eve of Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to North Korea, is also interpreted as a warning message to Beijing. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, the US says the door is wide open for negotiations with North Korea. With diplomacy kind of stuck in a holding pattern, Washington's chief nuclear envoy says North Korean negotiators must be empowered to discuss denuclearization. South Korea's point man on North Korea is also calling for another inter-Korean summit soon, ideally before President Trump comes to Seoul. That's going to happen later this month. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
A day ahead of the historic summit between the leaders of North Korea and China, the nuclear envoys of South Korea and the U.S. got together in Washington, urging Pyongyang to engage in talks with their leaders for the regime's complete denuclearization. Seoul Special Representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs Lee Do-eun and his U.S. counterpart Stephen Biegun met on Wednesday at an Atlantic Council event in Washington. Biegun said the U.S. is not setting any conditions for the resumption of nuclear talks with Pyongyang, which have been deadlocked since the no-deal Hanoi summit in February.
But I also want to emphasize that the door is wide open to negotiations, and we expect and hope that in the not-too-distant future, we will be re-engaged in this process in a substantive way.
Biegun said the U.S. was willing to discuss all commitments made by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump made at the two leaders' first summit in Singapore last year, including security guarantees for North Korea. However, Biegun stressed that progress would require North Korea taking meaningful and verifiable steps on denuclearization. He called on North Korea to hold a fourth summit between the leaders of the two Koreas ahead of President Trump's visit to Seoul next week. The South Korean envoy urged the North to grab the golden opportunity, citing President Trump's promise to provide economic aid in return for denuclearization. He noted that while Seoul continues to implement sanctions on the North, such punitive measures are not a magical solution, but merely a tool to find a solution through negotiations. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The US Federal Reserve has kept interest rates unchanged, but hinted at rate cuts in the future. This comes as the US economy continues to face some uncertainties, such as the ongoing trade tensions with China and also Mexico. Go Ryun-hee reports.
The Federal Reserve held its benchmark interest rate steady on Wednesday at a range of 2.25 to 2.5%. The key interest rate, which has remained unchanged since December last year, affects various consumer rates, such as those for credit cards and mortgages, and the interest paid to savers. The Fed said the U.S. labor market remains strong and economic activity is moderately increasing. However, the Fed pointed to uncertainties coming from slower global economic growth and trade conflicts, signaling possible cuts in the future.
In light of increased uncertainties and muted inflation pressures, we now emphasize that the committee will closely monitor the implications of incoming information for the economic outlook and will act as appropriate to sustain the expansion with a strong labor market and inflation near its 2% objective.
The Fed also dropped a reference to being patient about adjusting rates in its statement, which is another signal for cutting rates for the first time in more than 10 years. The decision to freeze the rate was approved by a 9-1 vote. James Bullard, president of the Fed's St. Louis Regional Bank, disagrees, saying the Fed should begin cutting rates now. It marked the first disapproval since February last year. Since 2015, the Fed has raised rates 9 times, and it hiked them 4 times last year alone. Some analysts predict the Fed will wait until September to announce a rate cut, while others predict none will happen this year if Washington and Beijing agree on a trade deal in the near future. The Fed's announcement comes despite President Trump heaping political pressure on the Fed to cut rates, as he seeks to bolster his 2020 re-election campaign, which is sharply focused on economic prosperity in the U.S. After Bloomberg reported that the White House has explored the possibility of legally demoting the Fed chairman, Powell said he thinks the law is clear that he has a 4-year term and he fully intends to serve it. South Korea's central bank also kept its benchmark interest rate unchanged at 1.75% in May, leaving the difference between Seoul and Washington's rates at 0.5 to 0.75 percentage points. Go Ryun-hee, Arirang News.
Now, after 3 consecutive months on the up, South Korea's producer prices remained almost flat in May. The Bank of Korea says the production price index, a key barometer of future consumer inflation, stood at 103.7 in May, almost unchanged from the previous month. The central bank said industrial goods prices rose 0.2% on rising global oil prices, but agricultural goods prices fell more than 2% on increasing supply. The prices of electronics like semiconductors also rose slightly for the first time in 7 months. 4 people will face prosecution over the downing of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH17, the plane that crashed in eastern Ukraine 5 years ago, killing all 298 people on board. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Hong Yu. So this is a big development. The names and nationalities of these suspects have now been released. Tell us more.
A joint investigation team led by Dutch prosecutors has collected enough evidence to show Russia provided the missile launcher used to shoot down Malaysia Airlines Flight MH17 in 2014. Among the 4 people facing murder charges for the death of the 298 victims are 3 Russians, Igor Girkin, Sergei Dubinsky, and Oleg Pulatov, and 1 Ukrainian, Leonid Harshenko. Dutch police say they believe all of them are pro-Russian separatist commanders who may have been active members of Russia's military intelligence service at the time. The rebels had acquired heavy weapons from Russia, according to the Dutch officials. The chief prosecutor said they were responsible for the shooting, even though they did not push the launch button because they arranged the attack. In contrast to Ukraine, which welcomed the conclusions, Russia continues to deny any involvement and call the findings unfounded accusations to discredit Russia. But the investigators revealed Moscow has not been cooperative in the investigation process.
One day after 17th of July, they could have been in the position to tell us exactly what happened, because they know. I'm sure they know what happened, because a book Taylor from the 53rd Brigade has been used, and they know this. And they didn't give us this information, and I wouldn't call this cooperation.
The Netherlands, Australia, Belgium, Malaysia, and Ukraine participated in the probe questioning over 200 witnesses and reconstructing the plane from fragments collected from the crash site. Dutch officials have issued international arrest warrants for the 4 men, and their trial will take place on March 9, 2020 in the Netherlands, even if they're absent, which is likely since the Russian constitution prohibits extradition. A U.S. Navy explosive expert says the limpet mines used to attack a Japanese-owned oil tanker near the Strait of Hormuz last week bore, quote, a striking resemblance to mines used by the Iranian regime. Commander Sean Kitto of the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet said Wednesday that the damage on the oil tanker was not consistent with an external flying object hitting it and is observed to be consistent with a limpet mine attack. Tehran continues to deny it was behind the June 13th attack on the Japanese tanker. YouTube is reportedly mulling the possibility of moving all children's video to the standalone YouTube Kids application that was developed in 2015. The Wall Street Journal reports YouTube executives are discussing such measures to better protecting young viewers from objectionable videos. The report explained it would be a risky move as children's videos are among the most popular on the platform, bringing in millions of dollars in ad revenue. Changes were proposed following complaints from consumer groups as well as a recent federal investigation by the Federal Trade Commission for YouTube's handling of videos aimed at young viewers.
Time now for our Life and Info segment where we focus on information useful for your everyday life. It is Thursday, so we are going to turn our focus to movies and the latest releases at the cinema. To walk us through the movie set to hit the silver screen here in Korea, we have our Min-sun joining us in the studio. Min-sun, what movies do you have for us today?
Hi, Mark. So the latest in the series of 2 well-known film franchises are hitting theaters in Korea today. And those are Disney and Pixar's Toy Story 4 and a reboot version of Child's Play. And both will be released in the US on Friday, and the original Toy Story was released in 1995 and Toy Story 3 was released in June 2010. So the latest installment is bringing the characters back for almost after a decade. And after such a long wait, many viewers in Korea are excited about the the new release. Some 120,000 tickets were pre-sold as of Wednesday night, and it's ranked the #1 in the pre-sales among the newly released films this week.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be very popular considering how well received the previous 3 films were in the Toy Stories series. It's kind of unbelievable to think that Toy Story 1 came out almost 25 years ago now. Makes me feel old at least, but they're all very fun and family-friendly movies, so it doesn't matter if you're an adult or a kid, you can enjoy that. Without spoiling anything, because we don't like spoilers when we talk about movies, can you tell us a bit about the story of Toy Story 4?
Sure. So the story begins at a new owner, Bonnie's house, with familiar characters like Woody, Buzz Lightyear, and Jessie. And when a new handmade toy named Forky runs away, denying its faith as a toy, Woody and his friends go on an adventure to persuade and bring Forky back to Bonnie. The story takes place at various places like traveling carnival and an antique store to provide a variety of visual attractions. It's also showing at IMAX theaters for fans who want to have even more vivid viewing experience. An animation is loved for its charming toy characters and heartwarming stories. Along with new characters like Forky and baby doll Gabby at the antique store, the voices of the main characters, Woody and the Buzz, are played by the same actors, Tom Hanks and Tim Allen, who took the role for the whole series. So there's something for everyone to enjoy, whether you like the new or older Toy Story movie.
Yeah, well, I'm very much looking forward to watching that at some point, hopefully this weekend, and maybe it will encourage my sons to get their Woody and Buzz toys out once again. They haven't played with them in many years now. Now, you said there's another film coming out. It's a kind of remake of an old classic, Child's Play. I remember watching the original when it came out on VHS. But it's all about this scary doll, Chucky, that never dies.
Right, so this is the 8th version of the Child's Play, and it's the remake and reboot of the original film released in 1988 under the same title. When the doll that was gifted as a birthday present to Andy becomes self-aware and reveals its evil nature, it becomes Andy's worst nightmare. This year's Chucky got some major upgrades with the advancement of technology. Geared with artificial intelligence, the killer doll can connect to and control all the digital devices around it to turn on the TV, change the room temperature, and manipulate smartphones. Using these powers, Chucky tracks down and persistently threats people and kills them to become Andy's only friend. It's horrifying because these are digital devices that we use in everyday life. You should consider watching Child's Play if you're looking for some horror to give you chills to hit the hot weather.
Yeah, that one is probably not for children to watch, despite its name being called Child's Play. I remember the original scaring me when I was a child, but that sounds interesting. Both of them seem like they'll be worth the watch in their own different way. But I hear there are some Korean movies or a particular Korean movie coming out this week as well.
Right. A Korean film titled The Beast will be released on next Wednesday. It's an action thriller film about police trying to solve a murder case. A detective named Han-soo makes a deal with the drug dealer Chun-bae to get a critical clue to get a notorious murderer. The deal is to cover up another murder by Chun-bae. And then another detective who is Han-soo's rival finds out about the cover-up, and Han-soo gets in a difficult situation where he has to catch a suspect and get a promotion while keeping his dirty secret. And Han-soo is played by the actor Lee Sung-min, who was also in the thriller crime film The Witness released last year. The Beast is a global production project made by both Korean and French producers and takes the main storyline from the 2005 French film 36th Precinct.
Okay, sounds good. So if you've already watched Bong Joon-ho's Parasite and you're waiting for another good Korean movie to check out, go and see The Beast. That's out next Wednesday, you say?
Right.
Okay, so we covered a whole genre of different genres of movies there, Min-sun. Thank you for putting that together for us, and I think I might go and check out Toy Story 4 if I have some time this weekend. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Now, we are going to take a quick look at some cultural events coming up here in Korea. The city of Seoul has set up an exhibition pavilion where visitors can learn more about the innovation that will be part of our future roads and sidewalks. Won Jung-hwan has this report on the Pavement Block Expo.
People often walk on top of pavements unaware of how much science has been put into them. Since 2013, Seoul Metropolitan Government has been promoting its innovative walking and pedestrian-related technology to the public through the Pavement Block Expo. The 6th edition of the Expo held at Seoul Plaza provided a platform for people to learn about the functionality and aesthetics of pedestrian block that is an integral part of our day-to-day lives. 23 companies have participated at the Expo, showing how their cutting-edge technology helps not only people but also the environment in the city. Indeed, most of the companies have showcased their products which focused highly on the environment and explained how urbanization can actually help tackle such environmental issues. And this particular company says they have developed a permeable block which can efficiently absorb and drain waters from the rain.
This block is for the control of sudden rainfall or lack of groundwater. When it rains, the water permeates really quickly into the groundwater control tank. Also during monsoon season and summer, it helps pedestrians as there won't be any puddles.
And among many other new technologies showcased at the Expo, almost everyone stopped in front of a booth that showed ways to reduce fine dust in the air. The science behind the eco-friendly pavement and dissolving fine dust works like this.
There's a substance called photocatalyst on each of the blocks. When these coated pavement slabs absorb sunlight, they emit their own substance that dissolves the nitrogen oxide that is found in air with high concentrations of fine dust.
The researcher explained that if the pavement is adopted, it can reduce 30 to 35% of fine dust in the air. The annual Expo provides a chance to take a look at how Seoul plans to gradually expand state-of-the-art pavement throughout the city and make use of surfacing techniques for all future maintenance work on pavement and roads for one ultimate purpose, improving the people's quality of life. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
Good morning. We'll be seeing plenty of sunshine today after days of rain and dark clouds. And Daegu and Gyeongju will feel like late July with highs hovering around 33 degrees Celsius this afternoon, while Jeju should have a pleasant day at 26 degrees. Regions in the south and Chungcheongbuk-do province, however, will have high levels of fine dust during the day, and it's going to be a sunny afternoon with high to very high UV rays across much of the country. Throughout June, we have been seeing frequent showers and more rain is in the forecast, making us wonder if monsoon season has come earlier this year. But actually, this year's monsoon season is forecast to arrive nearly a week later than average. The monsoonal front will approach Jeju and the southern coast by the middle of next week. Then central and southern provinces will get monsoon showers in early July. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Now, before we go, we have some news just coming in that Chinese President Xi Jinping has reportedly just departed from Beijing en route to Pyongyang for his first summit in the North Korean capital with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. So presumably he'll be arriving within the next 90 minutes to 2 hours or so. We'll have more details on that during our next newscast at noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye.
From Arirang Radio, this is Good Morning Seoul. Arirang.
You're listening to Newscast. What's up?
We also got a lot of fun things coming for you later on in the show.
What's up, guys?
Benji! What are we doing here?
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to the one and only Arirang Radio, a brand new studio!
Oh wow, this is so awesome.
This is so hot. Can I do my show here too?
Yes!
Amazing, right? I wonder what else is new.
Hey Sam, what are you doing up there?
Check this out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, not only can you listen to your favorite artists, but you can also see them.
So you can see me here,